how many of y'all use AI on a regular basis? Okay, that's good. How many of y'all use more than one AI chatbot? Okay. How many of y'all use an actual platform that does like orchestration with your chatbots? Okay, 2. Awesome. All right. Anybody doing any private AI where it's like self-driven AI, like UF Health has Gator AI and some of the other systems out there like that? No. Okay, cool. So kind of what we're going to cover today, kind of talk about it. I'm going to go through a little bit about the different AI bots or AI chat systems. I find it hard to, a lot of people think of both Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini as you go to their main thing, you talk to them and they talk back, and you talk to them and they talk back. The truth is almost every platform offers so much more than that, whether you realize it or not. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but like ChatGPT just came out with Codex, Microsoft with Microsoft Scout, which is kind of a whole autopilot system for the Microsoft ecosystem. Gemini has Spark, which is a full automation kind of platform, right? And you may actually be able to use some of these tools if you're paying for it already, if you're paying some of the fees that they have already as part of the plans and packages. So we'll get into some of that. I'll try and go through some real world cases. I really would like to, though, if you're thinking about this and going through this and you're seeing these slides and you are thinking about your company, at the end of this, if we have time, and it kind of depends on how many questions we get, I'd really love to like whiteboard a solution for somebody today. Maybe 1 or 2. I mean, we obviously can't get deep dive into it, but if we spend 5-10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes on an actual problem one of y'all has, talking through it and how we would address that through different layers of AI and different types of AI, I think that would be one of the most beneficial things we could do. So if you could think about that as we're going through this, hopefully this sparks some idea, or maybe you came here with an idea already about something within your company that you'd like to talk about. If someone is brave enough out there, would love to do that. So I always start with something like this. Too many people buy an AI tool, like any of the 4, and they're like, what can it do for me? You have to start with a strategy. And when you're talking about your company, that strategy has to include how it's going to integrate into your company, how other people in your company are going to use it, what it's actually going to do for you, how it's going to fit into your processes. The truth is, every company already has some type of processes, some level of SOPs, some level of the way that they do business on a daily basis, right? And too many people buy a tool and don't know how that's going to integrate, where really you should start with what are my processes, and then what tool plugs in the best for that. And so a lot of people go about AI differently. So real quick, how many people just signed up for like ChatGPT when it first came out and just started playing with it without any real plan? On a personal level, that's kind of cool. You start to get to a point naturally where it's like, hey, I can ask it how to help me draft an email. Awesome, right? And I'm pretty sure most people in this room have done something like that. But that only helps you as an individual contributor. That only helps you. You'll only get about a 10 to 15% like productivity increase off of that. Where you hear in the news where people are getting in 10x, 100x, 1000x type increases, there's so much more to it than just being able to do that. And that's where a lot of planning and strategy has to come involved, where process mapping, looking at your processes, figuring out how it's going to fit in, how you're going to do the difference between deterministic and probabilistic type thinking, which every LLM is a probabilistic by nature, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. Does anybody even understand probabilistic versus deterministic type workflows of thinking? One guy. Awesome. One of my competitors, by the way. Sweet. So cool. And actually, that's not totally a AI thing. Like deterministic, probabilistic, stuff like that. Those are actually like psychological terms on the way things are processed, not necessarily an AI term. It's just that AI kind of falls into those 2 categories or some other categories in those types of thinking. So most AI deployments for businesses underdeliver. Go for it. All right. According to MIT, 5% of AI implementations never deliver expected ROI. Microsoft did a study last year too, that 87% of AI projects never make it out of proof of concept. Again, this is in the business environment, not in the personal, I can ask Sora 2 to make me a crazy little Instagram video. It's more of like, how are we actually going to produce ROI from the money that we're putting into these tools and from the money we're putting into these projects. So it's kind of scary. And so I'm going to ask you all, how many of y'all have actually had successful ROI from projects with AI? Anybody in the room? One guy, John, who I happens to have a really good guy that is doing some AI stuff for him. So anybody, no one else, y'all have put probably time. Are you question or you're just saying yes? Okay. Yeah. So, that's a problem. You as a business, there are one or two nonprofits in the room, but you still have to break even at least. But you as a business are in business to make money, right? How does that kind of feel that nobody in this room has made an ROI off of what you put into that? So something's kind of broken there. And most of it has to deal with your foundation or the level of context and knowledge base or no real training plan or adoption. Those are the three key things out of those two studies and 4 or 5 other studies that are out there on why this fails. And obviously you're not alone. It's kind of why I'm talking today. So we define this is proprietary to us, but we started as a technology company in 2014, where a lot of other people hopped into AI from something else. They were in some field, they started playing with AI, they started learning more than their peers, and now they're the AI expert, right? Which is cool. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people that are very smart, and I've interacted with a lot of AI specialists that came from other backgrounds, right? But from a technology background, all of your data lives somewhere. My guess is people in this room are using Salesforce or HubSpot, or they're using Office 365 with SharePoint and OneDrive, or they're using Google with Google Drives and Team Drives, or they're using Dropbox, or they're using something like that. Your data lives somewhere. And those systems are all technology-based systems. One of the biggest problems, going back to the other slide, of context and knowledge base is what's the difference of an AI bot that's integrated with thousands of pieces of information from your like database versus an AI bot where you say, I'd like you to help me with customers, and my customers are kind of like this. There's a lot more context in that I have 30,000 records in HubSpot of all the sales interactions we've done in the last 5 or 10 years versus I've written out a paragraph and a half or a page about my clients and want that analyzed, right? So where does the true like business enterprise value come from? It's that integration and context. So in the technology maturity model, I'll just start at the basic. Operational IT, that's what you think of support. Can I turn it on? Can I turn it off again? Why can't I get to the internet? What do I do when I don't get my email? Stuff like that, right? Then the truth is how that integrates is if you aren't getting to the internet on a regular basis because you're having issues, why invest in ChatGPT or Claude or anything you can't get connected to it? So what's the point in spending that money? You need to correct your base of operational IT. You need to make sure you're doing the right cybersecurity stuff. You hear these horror stories where, oh, we launched AI, we let it ingest all our data or connected it to our data stores, and then the next thing we knew is that somebody could ask it questions and it got the executive bonus structure out of that. That's not an AI problem. That's a security and compliancy problem. You didn't have your permissioning set up right. You don't have your identity and government set up right. AI just amplified that and helped you find it. But the truth is they could have done that without AI too. That's bad security practice. And what you're going to allow to go in and out of AI, that should be controlled by your governance. Like a lot of companies that are in healthcare and stuff like that, let's face it, HIPAA, FINRA, SEC, SOC 2, they've been around for a lot longer than AI. And if you're in a regulated industry, you're worried about your data on a regulation basis even before AI was a thing, right? This just complicates that problem. So you got to have a good security structure. And a lot of people that come from an outside field don't necessarily even know how to do that or understand that. Then you get into business integrations, and we'll get into that in a minute, where everything's kind of integrated. You have a organizational mind versus a kind of hodgepodge of things like most companies are. And then finally, that's when you get into innovation, which nowadays is generative AI, but machine learning, different product developments, digital transformation was a term for a long time, even before the last 2-3 years. And that's really what this is about. So I'll give a use case that is not AI driven at all. This is a use case that's older. And it's about Domino's. Most people don't realize this. Domino's owns patents on the way that their ordering system works. If anybody's ever used the Domino's app or the Domino's website to order pizza, as it makes the pizza, it tracks what things are doing. And you can literally give a star rating to the person that made your pizza, to the person that put it in the oven, to the person that took it out of the oven. It's GPS tracking it on how far away it is. It'll integrate with Amazon Alexa and different things like that to give you an announcement that is 2 minutes out, which is great if you have kids or just don't want to be in the bathroom when the guy shows up with your pizza, right? Like, this was groundbreaking in the day. Now I realize Uber, DoorDash does, kind of all does this stuff. But this is they started this process years ago. So how does this fit into a technology maturity model or to think about technology? So operational IT, obviously all the stores are connected and interconnected to their systems, their cloud systems, and they have backup systems so that they don't go down, because if this system went down a lot, no one would use it. So they have things like that. Obviously they're dealing with credit cards, HR data, finances. They've got some security, because if you've heard about Domino's getting hacked regularly, you wouldn't be using their app either to do this. So obviously they did that. From a business integration side, that's where you start to get cross-departmental conversations. So with this app and this technology innovation, how do they fix HR problems? Simple. This person in this store that runs the oven always gets lower ratings than everybody else in that store, and also always gets lower ratings than all these other stores. And this store over here has lower ratings in this area. So now you have HR ways of actually judging people with client feedback. Obviously takes money from accounting and finance. A lot of loyalty and customer engagement is driven into their marketing from their app and from data from their app and that you put into the app. So there is cross-departmental decisions that were made about this process that involved technology. It wasn't somebody in one department went somewhere and did something and somebody in another department went somewhere and did something. You had to have a mature enough company that was integrated enough to actually map those processes out and figure that out. And I'll be honest, with a lot of second stage businesses, that's a big problem. Can you get everybody on the executive team in the same room and to agree that this is how this process should be done across the board? I love walking into like a department and there's 10 people sitting there and you ask them, all right, how do you do this? And one guy says one way and one guy says the other way, and there's no actual process. Yeah, they're all in sales, but the way they're documenting stuff in the CRM and the way they're calling people, it's all different, right? Well, how do you standardize that? How do you automate that? That's only going to make AI worse, having those kind of differences in there. So that's kind of just a general use case. Talk about that a little bit more. This is what most companies look like when we walk into them or when we talk to them. You have the marketing department went out and they got this tool and they're using this tool. And oh, by the way, this other department got out and got a tool that does the same thing. I walked into a company the other day and they're using Monday.com, Asana, and Microsoft Project. At the heart of things, all three of those systems do the same thing. Yes, there's a few different features and a few different settings that you can do in one versus the other. But I had to sit down with them and be like, why are you paying for three systems that do the same thing? Why is this employee got access to all three and you're buying a license to all three of them for that one employee? Where if you consolidated that and got everybody to work together and figured out one system that worked for you, that'd be better. Now, here's the problem with that. AI is like a human, right? If I have to train a human to go into three different systems to do their job versus one system to do their job, it's more complex for the human, right? It's also more complex for the AI agent. It's more programming, it's more integration, more MCP servers, more API calls, more cost to you in the end for tokens that you're using to process all that stuff. So before you even get down to that journey, how do you get to something like this? How do you have your data centralized or single sources of truth? I also love where somebody gets ChatGPT or Gemini and they build a Gemini gem and they upload some Excel spreadsheets into that Gemini gem. And then one of their employees goes and changes the Excel spreadsheet over here, and that version doesn't get uploaded into the Gemini gem. How accurate is that data as you're talking about that? That's how you get bad data out of your AI. So how do we get to this? That should be a good starting point for everybody before you even try and pick a platform. Talk about the strategy of why we want something like this and get everybody to agree that this is how we're going to kind of do things in our company. And it's different per company, don't be wrong, but you got to somehow get close to this for it to be powerful. So there also are levels of AI. Like I talked about private AI earlier, talked about some other things, true AI platforms that include enterprise orchestration and things like that. We'll kind of go through these generally, but where most people are is here. They're using a chat tool. Even though some of those companies like Google have more than a chat tool, they have Notebook LM, they have a whole bunch of other things. They have automation systems. Same with Microsoft. Even ChatGPT and OpenAI with Codex now has more than just chat function. However, 90% of y'all are probably going, hey, tell me about this or help me draft this email. And you're typing that in and you're waiting for it to come back. and then you got to type something else in and wait for it to come back. And that's, like I said, that's great. That's only a 10 to 15% gain in productivity though. If I can have some things like down here where I have full privatized AI with all of my data in it and get more accurate details, and I'm also using some type of orchestration system that's going, hey, intake this information, check it against this, check it in this, then have a GPT model make this decision, then do this, and then have Claude clean it up and make a nice proposal, and then do this and this and this, and then do this and then do that. Like, that's a whole different ball game where you can even involve multiple bots or multiple different AI systems and brains inside that orchestration layer. And you can do that deterministic, do this, if that, do this, where AI, LLMs, which are used to, which all the tools that we're going to talk about today really are LLMs, large language models, are probabilistic, meaning you're going to give it something instruction-wise, and it's going to try it. But it's predicting what you want based on the patterns of words that you put in. It's not actually thinking. It's predictive analytics based on the words, based on the next symbol it feels it should come. And you can actually control that, not necessarily in the public models, but you can control the randomness and the temperature settings and stuff like that in some of the models, where it could be a GPT-5o model, but you turn the randomness up, or you turn the temperature up, or you turn certain other things around, and it kind of has some levers, and you can get complete different results. Also, because it's probabilistic and processing so much data, the probability is changing regularly. And that's why, like at the bottom, you have that little refresh button where if you don't like the answer, you can press that refresh button and it does it again, right? And it's going to give you a different answer. And you can ask it something today, and you can ask it the same question tomorrow, and the way it explains it and everything's going to be different. Again, because of that probabilistic, the probabilistic prediction of the letters that it thinks that it needs to appear next to the next letter. So it's like looking at a list of 100 words and saying, this is probably the next one or two that we should do. And if that probability is close, it may give you a different answer every single time it factors. So, as we mentioned, business is your real competitive advantage, or data is your real competitive advantage, right? Where does your data live? How can you get that data in and out of these systems? A generic system, like if you just go to ChatGPT, which is trained off the open internet, and ask it questions, you're going to get open internet questions. The truth is, there's a lot of things online I don't want my kids to know. There's a lot of things online I don't necessarily want my LLM to know. There's a lot of things online that I don't really care about, right? And so an example of that is okay, if you're asking ChatGPT something like they had that case, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, where those lawyers typed up some briefs and quoted some cases that technically didn't exist that they got from ChatGPT. The truth is, ChatGPT may have found that on the open internet. It could have been a project. It could have been a pure hallucination, but I don't think so. And ChatGPT will never open their Komodo on this. But it very easily could have been a project for like students. Could have been some type of college project. Could have been some fake brief for training. Could have been a hypothetical thing. And then also with that, how do you know that you're actually reading the judge's opinion, not a reporter's opinion of that judge's opinion, or worse, a Reddit post opinion about the reporter's opinion about that judge's opinion, right? How accurate is that data? So if you can control the context and go, okay, I don't know, Mason Nexon. I was going to say Morgan & Morgan, but I feel bad doing that. But if I'm Brian back there and I go, okay, these are all the cases we've ever tried, and I know for a fact this is the judge's opinions and the court records and things like that, and I'm making decision data off of just that information and locking it just to that and not public information out there, how much more accurate is that for them? Does that kind of make sense? So the more business data that you can tie together, that is your data. That's the best way to do this. So we'll talk about these real quick. I'll start with ChatGPT. That's really, ChatGPT was built for consumers. It, was originally free, and then they came out with some paid versions and kind of created some business versions. But at the end of the day, it's still a consumer model. And usually, when you look out on LinkedIn and you see all this stuff that people calls AI slop, and you can tell that, oh, that was written by AI, most of the time it's ChatGPT. It's very broad. It was trained off the open internet, and it's not a bad place to start, but it is kind of they were basically famous because of the first mover. Everybody knows their name, right? They weren't necessarily the first LLM out there. They were just the first thing that everybody had heard of. So they do have some, a base free plan. I don't really recommend it because all you're allowing them to use everything you put into that as part of their training. They do have some paid models starting at 20 to 30 bucks a month and going up from there. But there's not a real strong integrations. Yes, you can mount a Google Drive with it and do some things like that, but there's not a strong integrations into the rest of your corporate data. It takes a lot of either third-party tools like N8N and things like that to do orchestration with, or different systems like that to do API calls and stuff with, and you're going to need somebody to help you do that. So you're going to hit a limit with ChatGPT where I don't know how to do API calls and I don't know how to build an MCP server and stuff like that, right? And yeah, you can kind of ask ChatGPT about that and it'll help you, but the truth is we are here not as technicians, except for one guy. So you are here not as technicians, so I don't expect you to know how to do API calls and all that, but so you're going to hit that ceiling naturally with ChatGPT, and you'll probably hit that ceiling on most of these as well. So Claude and Claude Cowork. Claude itself with artifacts is pretty cool, the way that they do artifacts. And if you've never experienced like Claude Chat with artifacts, it's kind of cool what it does. And Claude Chat lives in the cloud, and you can access it through the cloud. Cowork is another system of theirs, but you have to have their desktop version, and it has access to files on your desktop. There's a lot of people worried about security around that. But it is really cool. Cowork opens up something called Claude Skills, where you can start to do some deterministic guardrails, where you can say, I want it this way every single time, and it builds a skill file, and you put in to that skill file what you want, and you can use that skill file over and over and over again, which is pretty cool. And it's different than, say, a GPT, or a project, or a Gem and Gemini, where you're kind of just uploading some context. This is actually building, how you doing? You're fine. This is actually building like some type of instruction set with it. And Claude Code, honestly, Claude Code can't really be beat if you're into coding and want to use it for coding. Yes, thank you. First question.
I'm not following very well Claude Cowork versus Claude Skills.
Okay, Claude Skills is part of Claude Cowork. The Claude itself, the original version of Claude, and the Claude that you could access through their website. And if you're using the Claude desktop, it has Cowork as a slider option, right? When you're in, and also Code as another option. So you have like 3 options, right? Claude Cowork has skills built into it, and you can do skills within Claude Cowork. You cannot do that outside of Claude Cowork. Good question. Anything else? Sweet. Claude also, Anthropic created the whole MCP protocol, which is a protocol to connect a lot of AI systems together. And it does work with that very well because they created it. However, almost everybody else has introduced it into their systems as well. It's no longer like a moving factor for them. Everybody pretty much supports it, but they define the protocol. They can, with Cowork, you can build your own MPCs. So it'll build MCP servers for you inside your desktop, but that runs on your desktop. And when you shut down your desktop or you turn off your desktop, no longer access. It's not running in the cloud. It's running on your stuff. It communicates with the cloud for processing. And again, kind of similar pricing model. They do go well above $30 for a team. Govin's license back there is about $180 because of the amount of credits he burns through because of Claude Code. But we have reasons for that. So Gemini, I like Gemini a lot for personal stuff. Gemini is really where you start to experience true data connection. And I've had a Gmail account since Gmail was an invite-only system. And I've used Google Photos and a whole bunch of stuff on the personal side of my life, not really on the business side, but on the personal side of my life. And so I was asking Gemini, one of my goals was to become a pilot. And when you turn 40, there's some different rules about your FAA medical and how long you have to do before renewal of your FAA medical and stuff like that, right? And so I was asking questions about it. And because Gemini is so integrated into all of my systems, because I do pay for it on the personal side, it knew how much I weighed because it was connected to my Fitbit app and it was connected to other things like that. So literally I'm asking a question and it's like, oh, because you weigh this amount, and gave me the exact weight that I weighed, and this, and this, and oh, by the way, we know about this thing what your doctor emailed you about, you should probably X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh, holy crap, you know too much about me, right? But as long as you understand that it knows that context, and the truth is ChatGPT would have never been able to do that because ChatGPT was not connected into all that stuff. And when I was thinking out of a prompt or thinking out what I was going to ask it, I would have never thought to include some of the stuff that it pulled automatically through the stuff that I already had saved in different areas of Google. So very, very powerful. I love it on the personal side. We use Monarch personally for like budgeting. I don't know if anybody's looked into some of those apps like Mint and Monarch, and Mint's no longer around, but that kind of keep track of your personal finances. My wife and I and stuff use it, and it sees the emails from Monarch and stuff like that. And so literally it'll alert me, hey, like I'll ask it some questions, be like, hey, well, according to Monarch, you don't really have the money for that, or, it's like, thanks, Google. Yeah, but on the enterprise side, they do have some really cool things within. They have an agent builder that works within Workspace. It starts about, you got to do the Workspace add-on for $30 a month to do a lot of this stuff. It is embedded into Gmail. You can ask it about your email. It's more embedded into your entire ecosystem. They have this thing called Notebook LM where you can control all your notes and just your data. That's pretty cool. However, Copilot came out with notebooks, and some other systems now have kind of notebooks, but they were really one of the first to do it with Notebook LM. And one thing about Google is they're working on so many different levels of AI and different things of AI. Like I think I mentioned on this slide, I don't mention on this slide, like VO. Oh, I do VO for video generation and stuff. If you pay for the higher tier, like the $100 and something tier with VO, and you're using their flow system, you can create like 4K videos, like full featured videos and stuff, and it's really cool. It's not the same as Gemini. They've now changed the interface to where you can select video and stuff within Gemini, but like Flow is a complete separate ecosystem that you get when you pay for Gemini that most people don't even know about. But there's some really cool stuff that Google's doing in that arena. And again, starts at $19 a month for most of y'all to play with it real. Yes.
So we have Workspace, Google Workspace. We have Gemini built in, but probably the basic, right? That comes with
Right.
So, but we have ChatGPT that has the connectors as well. That connects with the Gmail, with Google Drive, with all the apps that you can connect to your ChatGPT. Is that not the same as?
No, Google has a deeper level of integration with their own systems. Yes, you can connect things to ChatGPT through Enterprise. However, like the controlling of permissioning and ID management within Google does not translate into ChatGPT. So like some of the security permissions and things like that, no. Where Gemini will respect the Google ecosystem more, and there's more context data and metadata that lives inside Google that Google uses that they're not going to share with ChatGPT because it's proprietary to them, right? And so there is a little bit more level of integration when you're doing the paid Gemini within Google Workspace that an external system can't necessarily do over APIs. Gemini.
No, it's different than.
Well, I mean, it's for what I mean. I'm sorry for.
Software that we have called ChatGPTs,
Mm-hmm.
and it's for every user.
Right. Okay, but that connection, yes. So you have so and so has a user, so and so has a user, so and so has a user. They have their connections into Google Enterprise, right? Google Enterprise has its own set of connections. So let's say you have like within a Google Drive, you have financial files that within Google, you have permissions that say these people have access to these financial files, but also in that same drive, you have these other financial files and stuff like that. Some of that type of management does not cross over. You have to manage them individually. Huge chance of mistakes there. And that security protocol does not fall into ChatGPT. So you have a big chance of bleeding your own data into ChatGPT for people that, yes, you have individual users in Teams with ChatGPT that you've set up accounts for, but how those accounts cross back into Google ecosystem, you could have a lot of security violations if you're not very, very careful. Does that make sense? So it's the sucking in of the data and what data is allowed to be sucked in, where Gemini that lives inside of Google knows the Google permission structure because it was programmed by Google and it's tied into Google. So it's a lot more likely to follow that permission structure across the board, where ChatGPT doesn't even understand that permission structure. You have the same problem with Microsoft as well. It's not just Google. You have the same problem with Microsoft. Yeah, good question. Did I see it? Yes. So I don't do a lot of government stuff, so I don't follow the government pricing as much. So I'd have to look it up for you, honestly. I can ask, like, I just don't do a lot of government stuff, and the few government stuff that I do, they're on Microsoft 365. I have some nonprofits on G Suite, which obviously get pretty good deals too, but not anybody in the government pricing space. So I don't really know the government pricing off the top of my head. But I yes, not not really right now. Um, which yeah, I think that's something that'll happen with them. And like Copilot has notebooks that are very similar to Notebook LM, but yeah, Claude really doesn't. And at least that I found. So last, I'm going to use Microsoft Copilot. How many of y'all have tried Copilot? How many of y'all like Copilot? There's a few. Okay. Copilot's one of the most hated. However, Copilot's one of the most powerful. And the reason why it's the most hated is one reason why it makes it really good for certain ecosystems. It is a layered ecosystem approach. You can use multiple models within Copilot. I could show you right now on my computer how I could use Claude and Cowork inside of Copilot. My Copilot license gets me both GPT models and Claude models, and through partnership, if I wanted to turn them on, I have to accept the terms and the security risk. XAI models, like Grok models. Most people don't know that. And the reason why is it's built for an enterprise. It's expecting an admin to help set this up. Like if you program or you set up a Copilot agent and you want to share that with everybody, or you want to deploy it across the enterprise. Well, within Office 365, when you deploy an enterprise app, there's a whole bunch of stuff that it looks at when it comes to permissioning and who has access to what and things like that. And if you've never deployed an enterprise app before, trying to deploy that agent is not very intuitive and it's going to piss you off. But from an IT admin point of view or security point of view, or if you have a CISO or you have to meet compliances, it checks tons of boxes that the others don't when it comes to that level of security. I can choose who can use what features and things like that, which you can do to some level in ChatGPT, you can do to some level in Claude, but the level of data loss prevention and like Microsoft 365 already has a whole data loss prevention thing that looks at credit card numbers, social security numbers, stuff like that if you turn it on after you use it, right? It also has sensitivity tagging for like secret, top secret, whatever. You can create your own sensitivity tagging, right? Copilot understands all that because it's built into Microsoft. All the other systems do not. So if you are dealing with social security numbers, credit card numbers, things like that, and you are worried about data loss, and you are using those features within Microsoft, Copilot will work with that. However, that's all very technical and normally needs some type of IT admin to set it up. I got guys that go to college for this 4 years degrees that still don't, totally do everything with the Microsoft ecosystem like that. Microsoft has 20 something certifications within the Microsoft ecosystem that some of them are AI based. A lot of them are not AI based. So it is a very big ecosystem. And the way that Microsoft can tie into everything is really, really cool. However, what sucks about it is that all of y'all try Copilot and you try the free version that is not tied into anything that Microsoft should have never published. And also you have no permissioning. So it can't do anything. So yes, it sucks badly. But from a corporate point of view, and for you protecting your data and for you using your data properly, and if you're using Microsoft already, there's nothing more powerful because it builds into like Power Automate is a system that's been around for 10 plus years. That is a deterministic robotic process automation system. Copilot fits very naturally into that. Yes, you could use Make or N8N, LangChain, other things like that with OpenAI or Claude and some things like that to make that work. It's kind of all built into the Microsoft ecosystem already. Things like Power BI, Power Pages, stuff like that. Power BI has been around for a long time too. Copilot's part of the same Power Platform that Power BI is. The way that it can interact together with data, very, very powerful. None of the other systems have a way to tie into Power BI like that. They can help you create Power BIs, but they can't tie into the actual background data the same way. Question.
This would be a good place to differentiate between deterministic and the probabilistic.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically where you're looking at, right? You could do both deterministic and probabilistic workflows 100% through here. Like, there is a use case that comes up where we used Microsoft RPA that was 100% deterministic, no probabilistic LLM at all. But it's an AI workflow, right? You can't do that with any of the other three models that I just talked about. You'd have to have third-party tools or other systems. It gets a lot more complex. You're now paying for multiple different products to do that. So Copilot can be very cool. It's best fit for security items, and it's a best fit for if you are already in the Microsoft ecosystem, which raise your hand if you use Microsoft 365 for email or something. Raise your hand if you use Word and Excel, right? That's 70% of the room. So I would suggest for 70% of the room, that's where you start. But you do need help with making sure that it goes right. You do need help understanding the rest of the management of the Microsoft ecosystem, because like we talked about Notebook LLM with Gemini. Notebook LLM's cool. It lives there. Notebooks within Copilot are actually built on something called Microsoft Loop. Most of y'all have Microsoft Loop right now. It's been around for a while. You can use it. It's kind of like Microsoft Notepad or OneNote, but it's a little bit different in the way it's structured. And so you can do things with Microsoft Loop that has nothing to do with AI, and you document a lot of things in there. You can have policy procedures in there, all that other stuff. However, when you go to use Copilot and you want to start a notebook, it starts it with Loop. So if you don't understand how Microsoft Loop happens, or you don't have your IT admins don't have settings around Microsoft Loop correct, guess what? That affects your ability to use Copilot correctly. So again, if you're an enterprise or a medium-sized small business, whatever that's using Microsoft, you gotta do that. Yes.
My organization has required us to use Copilot because we use 365. So
yep.
Is that what we're going to see for security reasons, that they don't want Claude or ChatGPT accessing data that Copilot already has access to, so it makes sense for security?
Usually, yes. Also price. I can use a Claude model within Copilot at no additional cost. If I pay for Copilot and I pay for Claude, now I'm double paying. And if I do that across 100 employees, how does that look financially? So yes, it could be financial. It could be security. Again, what type of field are you in?
It's working with manufacturing companies. It's a government funded organization.
Government, right there. That's why. Government.
So
yeah.
Security is key.
Yeah.
I use Claude myself and would prefer to use Claude, but they just required us to use Copilot because we're already on 365 and it's a security.
So they may not have educated you on this, and they may not even know this as well, but you can use the Opus models and Sonnet models within Copilot, and you can build Copilot agents on those models. And like I said, there's even a version of Cowork inside of Copilot that you can take skills right outside of your Claude Cowork and drop them into your Copilot Cowork. Same skill structure. So if you have skills that work in Claude Cowork, you literally can copy and paste.
More tokens for Claude?
It can. Most of the time, though, it depends on what you're doing. Unless you're doing automation, they don't count tokens. So Microsoft flat fees a lot of that. Now, there is versions of Copilot that are tokenized. There's also, and I'll get into this in a minute, there's also, when I say levels of Copilot, like you have Copilot, the regular chatbot that you can build a basic agent in. You have Copilot Studio that you can build agents in that do a lot of cross connections and control MCP servers and computer use agents and a lot of cool stuff like that. Then you have Azure AI Foundry that you can host your own LLMs in, do your own data blob storage, do your own databases, do whatever you want in, right? It's the only ecosystem that has full, all the way from I'm a basic person that doesn't understand a lot and I don't want to get too confused, to I'm an actual like MIT Stafford graduate that understands the underback line of how an LLM is going to work, and I'm going to self-program that LLM 100%. Yep.
It's going to use the token for Copilot, and it's not going to double.
No, you don't even pay Claude. No. You don't have to have a Claude account to even use Claude inside of Copilot. You just have to have a Copilot account. And I'll tell you why in a minute. Because like I said, there's a lot of stuff changing very quickly. And last night at 12:30 at night, this morning at 12:30 in the morning, however you want to look at that, I added another slide after this to make sure I covered certain things, but I have some hot takes on some of this, right? that may or may not be true. Did I set too? Sorry. Here. So just kind of quick overview. I know it's going to be really hard for somebody on the back to read, but ChatGPT, more for general use. If you're not really heavily involved in the Microsoft or Google ecosystem, ChatGPT is not bad. ChatGPT is all public information. All public information, whether you like it, agree with it, whether it's factual or not, all public information is what it's been trained on. They just train it on the open internet. Claude, a little bit different training, still really open public information, same pricing structure for the most part, but Claude has a little bit stronger privacy and has some pretty cool features when it comes to Cowork and Claude Code. And in fact, Claude Code is really the best of the four when it comes to any type of programming. It can embed itself. Like we literally have ran Claude Code on this robot before. You can't do that with any other system that we're talking about today. And then Copilot, we've kind of talked about. Anybody got any questions on this, on the head-to-head comparison before I get on my hot takes? Sweet. So they kind of already covered this, but where to start, which model is right for you. But here's kind of my thoughts on the market overall. I'm really worried about OpenAI. They're losing market share like crazy. If this IPO does not work for them, they will be in bankruptcy. There's no doubt about it. They have no server storage without Microsoft investing in them, and Microsoft has stopped investing in them. They were a nonprofit originally, and now they're a for-profit company. When they made that transition, there's a lot of bad blood, and a lot of their original talent shed and is no longer with that company and has moved on to Claude and to Microsoft and other places like that. And they're in a bunch of debt because they're just trying to survive, right? And because of that, they're going to bring in somebody to start doing ads. It was announced about 4 or 5 months ago, they hired the guy from Meta that created all the Facebook ad systems, and they plan to sell ads within OpenAI. I'm really worried about that. I spoke on a podcast about this because one of the key things that most of these LLMs learn from, we talked about probabilistic thinking, how it's predicting based on usage and stuff like that, right? Well, there's something called reinforced learning. And one of the main ways that all of these are trained is on reinforced learning. So even though OpenAI is saying, oh, we're only going to do ads in the free version, or in this version, you can pay to not have ads, I'm worried about the influence it has on the overall platform. Because if a group of people saw, say, more ads for Hilton versus Marriott, and they started communicating more with the platform about Hilton because they saw ads about Hilton and started doing more and more reinforcement about Hilton, it's going to be more reinforced learning to bring up Hilton as a higher probability when you ask questions, right? Because it's looking at probabilities of what's been accepted by people. So if you're talking 5 times as much about Hilton because Hilton paid for ads, then how's it going to affect the rest of the platform? Even if I've paid extra to not have the ads, that reinforced learning is going to influence the entire platform. OpenAI, again, will not say anything about this, and is very quiet about this, but that worries me a lot, that it's going to influence the entire ecosystem. Even Google, who Google is known for ads. Google made all their money off of Google AdSense and pay-per-click ads and stuff like that for years. They are the king of online ads. They're like, no, we don't think we're going to do ads with Gemini. That's how they made all their money. And they're like, no, we're good. We're going to skip that. Like, to me, that says a lot. OpenAI is the only one that's like, we're going to do ads. And in my opinion, Facebook, did it get better or worse when they introduced the entire ads platform? It got worse, right? Someone said it. The usage of Facebook has gone down. The consumer level of how people view Facebook has gone negative. It's not really growing. Even Mark Zuckerberg has given up on it and went off and spent $75 billion trying to build the metaverse, right? So even he's given up on Facebook. Like, what's going to happen with OpenAI when they do that? So I'm really worried about that. Even if you pay for the highest tier to not have ads, I'm worried that your data and it's going to be influenced in your results. That's my opinion. No factual evidence of that, but try and find OpenAI publicly speak about that as well. You can't. Anthropic, I think they have lots of great technology. I think they're really cool. I think Microsoft partnering with them, investing in them is a big thing. And when they IPO, they will probably do very well. But they do not have the server infrastructure that Google and Microsoft have. They do not have the cash that they have yet. When they IPO, they'll have more cash. But they're doing really cool things, but even they have an issue with access to data. There's a big lawsuit about a year ago where they took a whole bunch of books that they bought and scanned those books in for training purposes because they didn't necessarily want to train off the open internet like ChatGPT did. So they literally bought intellectual property. They bought books, just like if you were a college student and you buy books, right? They bought a lot of books, thousands of books, cut the things off, scanned them all in, used it for training. Well, the people that wrote those books and published those books didn't really like that. And there was a big copyright lawsuit about it. Unfortunately, they did lose, but I don't think it was a right thing. Like, if I read a bunch of books and I have that knowledge and now I'm communicating to you about that knowledge, are you going to sue me for intellectual property rights, right? Well, that's basically what they did with Anthropic, and that kind of hurt. But their data is a little bit better because of that, even though they got sued over it. Gemini, Google has been a data company for 20 years. Everybody knows they've been open indexing the internet and archiving the internet for their entire life, right? That's what they've been doing. They know how to structure data. They know how to handle data. They've got the server infrastructure to handle data. They have, you want to know what a particular door of a house looks like in a particular address of Spain, you put it in Google Maps and you look at Street View and you see it, right? They have all that data. You want to know tree loss in the Amazon rainforest. You can look at, pictures or satellite imagery from 10 years ago and 5 years ago and today and compare that and analyze that and inspect that for tree loss in the Amazon rainforest, right? Because Google Earth. They have Google Knoll, which is a system that some of y'all may not know about that they've had for years, where they publish and maintain scientific documentation for people like MIT and Stanford and some of these other big universities and different studies and things like that. When they go say they're going to be published in some magazine, periodical, whatever, Google Knoll collects all that stuff. So I believe that Gemini has the best structured data for public. Like, if you're going to do deep research or you want to understand certain things about the world, like you want to know about the French Revolution of whatever, or you want to know about the Prince of Wales in 1337, or you want to know about anything that's public knowledge, I believe their knowledge is the least corrupt because they've been actively archiving it, curating it, and understanding it for the last 20 years. No one else on this list has. So if you want to actually do like deep research like that, that's public knowledge or that could be out there knowledge, that's, in my opinion, one of the best platforms. Also, to the point that there was a really large deal with Apple. Those of you that have newer iPhones, the next version of Apple Intelligence will run Gemini in the background. To the point that Apple wrote them a multi-billion-dollar check already with multi-billion dollars to follow. Because Apple's like, I can't compete with that either. So also there are world models, like Google owns Waymo. When you talk about a world model, you're not talking about probabilistic of language anymore. You're talking about mathematic physics. So the inertia effect of like braking or accelerating in a Waymo car and stuff like that, the way that the world is interpreted with gravity and stuff like that, and the actual physics of the world, it takes a lot more energy and money to run world models. There's a few big world models running, Tesla with their whole neural network for self-driving, Waymo, there's a few others out there. There's stuff with robotics that are world models, but those are going to be the next big models that come out that when they get kind of democratized down to our level, will be some really cool stuff. But you're seeing that already with some of the video processing and stuff like that. The world models are kind of coming around. They've got some really cool world model work going on that right now isn't necessarily available to you 100%, but it's coming to you and they're working hard on it. And they, again, they're not going to give us they're going to give somebody like me the access to the model that runs Waymo cars. But knowing that they developed that and knowing that they're working on models to come down from that gives me kind of some excitement about world models and about understanding physics and stuff like that. Microsoft has the cash. They're not going into debt just like Google. They have the server infrastructure. If you notice, they're the only one up here without their own model, though. Microsoft does have Microsoft Phi, which is a private model, but who's ever heard of Microsoft Phi? Microsoft made partnerships and they act more as a platform play. They're using OpenAI in the background, Anthropic in the background, and if you want to do XAI in the background. And they're adding more models, and you can do private models, and you can do your own models, and you can control the data of the models. So it's a very interesting thing, like when people say, I don't like Copilot. Copilot by default is the same GPT 5.5 that runs ChatGPT, just a little bit different data with some different safety guards around it. So it's kind of like, well, but you like ChatGPT 5.5, but you don't like Copilot. The difference is in the model. Again, the difference is in how that was set up what permissions were allowed, things like that. With Copilot, you can do some really cool things that OpenAI won't let you do. Like I can tell it I don't want any internet access for this AI to work. You can tell it that I only want it to use certain parts of data or certain things like that, where ChatGPT, you can do some of that now, but it's, it's a little off. Do you disagree? No? Okay, I kind of thought you were. I'll be honest, I haven't used ChatGPT that much in the last 6 months. It's the one I don't subscribe to it. I don't use it. My kids don't even use it. So if something changed the last 6 months, happy to hear about it though. So yeah, those are kind of like my hot takes on it. And try and give you a little bit more context on why I feel the way I feel on it. That's not just like my personal opinion versus the actual data of like what these systems are doing. Any questions before I move on? Oh, Gail's taking a picture. I can share the slides with you, Gail. So let's get into the next level. If y'all remember that level thing, I talked about agents like orchestration. Automation is really where it's at. Again, if you have to go to the chat model and say something to it for it to say something back, and then you have to go to the chat model to say something to it for it to say something back and just keep repeating that, it's not really saving, it's saving you time, but what if that could be fully automated, right? And that's where you start to get into orchestration level type stuff. And that's some of the stuff that we have a lot of fun working on, is the orchestration type stuff, where you start getting into deterministic versus probabilistic type integrations and controls, where like maybe you want to do something that's 100% deterministic, that is step A, step B, step B, step C, do not pass go, if this, if that, right? You can't really do that with all the LLMs that are out there. They will usually muck it up very quickly. And the more times you run it, the worse it gets, which is very interesting, right? With this, you can suck in different levels of context and things like that, but there are different ways you can trigger some of this stuff. Again, Copilot, most mature on its own. Google Agent Builder, very cool. It can do a lot of stuff. It's not a bad system. I still think Copilot's a little bit better at it, but if you're in the Google ecosystem, don't change because of that. Claude Cowork with MCP and with skills is kind of flexible, but again, the skills don't give it full deterministic type processing. It gives it like templated guardrails and some things of that nature. And then ChatGPT did come out with Operator. It is the least mature. It does work, but it is the least mature of all the kind of orchestration platforms. Now, there are third-party orchestration platforms. You have things like N8N, which I know Kai has talked a lot about. Some of y'all know Kai. There's other systems out there that you can do orchestration on. And there are full platforms such as like Stack AI, Bloomstack, things like that, and that's also kind of what Copilot Azure AI with Power BI or with Power Automate is, where you're calling in different AI agents, different brains of AI, different steps and different automation triggers and different ways of handling that. But those are third-party platforms. So you could look at paying for Stack AI and paying for tokens and paying for some things like that. Or again, you could just go with Copilot if you live in the Microsoft ecosystem. If you don't, although I'll be honest, I know I talk very heavily about Copilot. If you don't live in the Microsoft ecosystem, Copilot doesn't make sense for you. But as we talked about, 70% of y'all said you use Office 365. So that 70% is who I'm talking to. Then the cool stuff. This is really where it's at for business, private AI. And when I say private AI and running your own AI, that scares people. But we run 2 or 3 of our own AI models. We have an AI model running here on this robot right now. You can talk to it. It'll answer a ton of questions about our company. And if you get to a certain point in the conversation, it'll ask you for your email and phone number to book an appointment with you. And that we did all that through private trained AI that runs locally on that. It does not need the internet. It's not controlled by them. It's using Gemini, which is actually from Google. Google publishes three models right now that are privatized models. They are based off of what Gemini runs, but the Gemini models are different. And they have different levels of parameters, different sizing, different hardware requirements to run. But the smaller versions of Gemini and some of the others, you can run on an old laptop. You don't necessarily need a lot of specialized hardware. Now, it's not, you need to be specific about the data you want to control and want to interact with. And for most companies, again, y'all don't care about the French Revolution or the Vietnam War, or all this other crap that's loaded into these other LLMs, you may care about this set of data. And if that set of data fits within one of those models on an old laptop, guess what? You can use it. So, and that's a lot cheaper to run to some extent sometimes. You can also put those in a cloud. If you are in government or you're in certain compliancy things, this is the highest secure way to do AI. And a lot of people focus on the public models, but there are multiple very capable private models that you can run, that you can scale up. If you have the server power, you can scale up to very big. And to give you an idea, Starbucks does their own private model. BDO does their own private model. UF Health has Gator AI, which is their own private model. They also have Copilot, but they have a private AI model. A lot of bigger companies, they went the private way because they realized we have the data. If you think about, I'm working for Burger King and I'm using the AI bot to ask about a Whopper, and that AI bot is based on public information, it could get confused between the way you build a Whopper versus the way you build a Big Mac versus the way you build whatever. So if you ask it, how do I build a hamburger and stuff, and it's got data from all these different ways to build a hamburger, but you're Burger King and you only want your employees to do it the way the Burger King does it, what do you want to do? You want to control the data that's in there. You don't want your AI model to know about a Whopper. You don't want your AI, or to know, I'm sorry, you want your AI model to know about a Whopper. You don't want your AI model to know about a Big Mac or about a Wendy's hamburger or anything like that. You want to control that data set. You can do that with private models. And yeah, any questions on that? Yes. Sure, in a minute. Yeah, we can. Yeah. Actually, is the mic on right now? It's not on right now. So he for liability, we are in a law firm, right? For liability purposes, right now, a lot of automation is turned off. He does have the ability to map out areas and walk around autonomously. Right now, he will not move unless Govin back there moves him. So, but yes, we can do that in a minute. We can talk to the robot and stuff in a minute. So data privacy and guardrails. Have some basic rules up here. You need an acceptable use policy on what you're going to do with your company. And that needs to be defined. It needs to be based on the models and the different things that you want to do. But again, that starts back with that strategy. You don't want just anybody running around with AI. I see this where people that are in an environment like yours back there, where, oh, they're forcing us to use this model, but they didn't train us. And I literally see people pull out their cell phone and log into their personal ChatGPT account and ask ChatGPT information that's on their computer screen that's proprietary to that business. Sounds real secure, right? So people are doing stuff like that. Like Rule 4 is very real. I run scans on corporate networks all the time, and they go, oh, we pay for 5 ChatGPT accounts. That's funny because you have 12 people using it right now. I can show you that. Do you want to know which 12? Do you want to know how long they used them? And they're like, oh, we had no idea, right? So I guarantee you, if you don't have AI policies and you don't, when you're open up yourself to a lot of legal liability if you don't have policies, just like if you don't have acceptable use policies and other types of HR policies, right? But I guarantee you that your sensitive data is probably getting out there if you don't take this head on and at least do something to get this going in your company, because your employees are probably doing something on the back end that you probably aren't really happy with them doing if you really found out. So, kind of already covered this, but individual literacy, we talked about, like the ability to do emails, things like that. Talk about department level workflows of orchestration and stuff. When you can do a full organizational wide AI strategy that is doing multiple different types of models, multiple ways of doing the model with deterministic and probabilistic approaches, and you're doing orchestration, that's where you get that 100 to 1,000x type return that you hear about in the news sometimes that these bigger companies are getting. So, how not to fail? Start with the problem. Don't start with a tool. That's the biggest thing. Start with the problem that you're having in your company. And I'm going to go through some different use cases here. Have a policy. Try, if you have 1 or 2 people that want to try some things, let them try. But what I would say for most companies in this room is the juice worth the squeeze on your investment? And look for 1% changes. I'm going to go over 1 or 2 use cases here in a minute. Like the first one I'll go over was a $5,000 investment for that company. And it saved her 35 to 45 labor hours a month. It's right here in Apopka. Start with something like that. Start with one process. Then go to another, then go to another, then go to another. The next thing you know, you have this full agentic ecosystem working, where if you buy a tool and you're not even sure what you're going to use it for, and you don't have a way of like defining what those 1% changes are going to be, and you just try and jump off and do everything with AI, it's going to be a train wreck. And it normally is. So yeah, some use cases. Any questions before I get into use cases? All right. So Judy here from TRG, some of y'all may know her. She's a local business here in Apopka. She has about 15 employees. She had an issue where she has legacy manufacturing system that is kind of expensive. It's very hard to replace. So she was having issues with syncing it to a UPS World Ship to ship out her products after she manufactured it, and getting it into her billing system to bill her clients. So if this process didn't happen, no one got billed and nothing got shipped, which is pretty bad to be a manufacturer, to manufacture something and not be able to bill for it and ship it. So we talked to her. She either her or her floor manager or one of her supervisors, the top paid employees in her company, at the end of the day, after the floor closed, would go in and do this manual process. And sometimes it would be 30, 45 minutes. Sometimes it'd be an hour and a half, depending on how much product and stuff they made that day. And so we used Microsoft Power Automate with a computer use agent to basically do a deterministic workflow to do that process for her. It runs, she was very hesitant, and she wanted to press a button to make it happen. And about 2 or 3 weeks after that, she forgot to press the button. And you said, would you just like us to have it run every night automatically? And so finally, after 2 or 3 weeks, she was like, yeah. So now it's been running automatically for like 2 years. And her ROI on that was about 1.5 months. Her 3 top paid employees were somebody that was doing this every day. So now after that, she came back to us and was like, hey, I have this problem with ordering. When different people email in ordering forms, I'm having issues getting it into this system that does whatever, right? So we sat with her, and that's the next project we're doing with her, right? And that's like a $10,000 investment. So she's not coming out with thousands of dollars all up front to try and completely redo her entire system. We found little things like that she's getting instant ROI on. So as she's investing into the products or into the systems, she's getting ROI. And then when she gets her ROI, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? So you're not coming out with huge expenses to revolutionize your whole system all at once. And yes, it may take you a year or two to automate everything in your company and to use AI fully in your company by doing it this way, but you're not dropping all that money up front with the possibility of it not working out. You're going to know if it's going to work out or not very quickly on that particular project. Another use case is from here on out, most of the companies we work for were under NDAs. So we can't necessarily divulge too much, but the next company had a sales issue where when salespeople were low on quota and they wanted to actually do something about it, they would go look at job boards and look at companies that were hiring for CFOs, bookkeepers, comptrollers, stuff like that. They'd go out and research that company a little bit, and then they'd go out and try and argue, would it be better to outsource that and sell their outsourcing services versus them hiring an employee, right? So it was just a different lead source for them. That it worked, though. It worked pretty well for them. But their salespeople were only doing it every now and then when they felt like it. So we literally built a system that goes out, checks all the job boards on a regular basis, takes in that data, researches the companies that are hiring, tries to figure out, is it a small team, a large team? Is it a team of one? How large is that company? Who's the key contacts at that company? Does it meet their ideal client profile? Is it what they're really good at or not really good at it? Puts it into HubSpot and creates a marketing outreach program with the assignment for a salesperson to follow up. It'll start emailing them and stuff like that out of HubSpot. So we used web scrapers and APIs, intake data, prompted the LLM for the ICP target. So then this was where we mixed a deterministic process with an LLM thing. We did use an 8N for this, but like we scraped in a bunch of data. We did certain things with that data to format that data. Then we sent that data out to actually GPT 4.1, right? GPT 4.1 in this case, to process that, to kind of analyze it. Then based on that analyzation, it came back in and went through different workflows, a deterministic process, right? To then, if it met all the criteria and everything, put it into HubSpot, let HubSpot take the automation from there. Make sense? Use case that we're currently working on right now is I have an executive assistant. I pay her like $5,000 a month. So y'all probably have executive assistants too. She spends 30%, 20 to 30 hours a week going through my email because I get so much email. And it's ridiculous, right? So literally, Groven and I, and we're building this already where we have some Power Automate Copilot with Azure workflows that are running that are sorting all my email, starting to do this, sorting all my email, helping build drafts, but it's all automatic. I wake up in the morning, it's already done. I don't have to ask a chatbot, hey, help me draft this email. It's put certain emails in my needs response folder that, I'll be honest, I still have trouble getting through my needs response folder because it's waiting on me to respond or it needs approval from me or something like that. But puts it in my needs response folder, and I know that's something I need to follow up with. We have definitions for all these things. If it's a counting item, whatever, we have definitions for this, and it does different processes based on where it goes. And again, it's a workflow that has several different LLM probabilistic things, but also several deterministic orchestration things to make this happen, right? So at the end of the day, I won't need an executive assistant to do any of this stuff anymore. Another use case that we do internally, anybody familiar with They Ask You Answer? It's kind of like StoryBrand. They Ask You Answer is a marketing concept that it's a lot about content marketing. Will, I'm really surprised you haven't heard of it. Oh, okay. So it's a thing where like you want to preemptively answer questions through content of what people would have, right? And the guy that sold pools actually wrote the book on this. But we created They Ask You Answer type helper for when a salesperson or when someone's asking a question, they're not sure how to answer it, or there's content that we should give them to help answer that question, like a YouTube video or a blog post or something like that, or how to overcome an objection. We built this thing that goes through all of our blogs that we've posted, which we post hundreds of blogs a year, to say like what's most relevant. Here's the top 5 or 6 that would answer this question that you could give them to give them some more context, or here's some user guides or some scenarios that you could give them that we have already published in places that then they can then email out to that person, right? Where now they'd have to go through and go through and Google search our own website or try and figure out what we have published or whatever. This is just a bot that they can ask, very simple bot, knowledge bot. It would be very easy for anybody to build this. It would take you an hour or 2 to build this without somebody like us probably. But that's an idea we can that you can think about. That's more of a simple idea. So here's the part where, what time is it? I don't even know what time it is. Oh, we're running out of time. Anybody got any ideas they want to actually talk about? I don't know why the TV just went off. Okay. Anybody got any ideas or that what you'd like to try and whiteboard right now, how you would do probabilistic versus deterministic and what type of models you'd use and stuff? Or like a problem inside your business or a process you'd like to talk about? Awesome.
So I would like to have Copilot analyze all of my email and calendar, identify companies that I'm interacting with, and then have it automatically update with opportunities and activities in Salesforce, so that I don't have to manually do it.
Okay. So there's kind of 2 ways to do about that. Salesforce has its own AI built in, right? And I don't know if your company allows that or that's a conversation. But Salesforce has its own AI modules and AI agents that's baked into Salesforce. So there's some choices from the Salesforce side where you could suck that email in and let Salesforce do it, or you could do it if you wanted to automate it. It'd have to be done through Power Automate, where it's going to check that email, read it, analyze it, and then based on that, take that data, put it into Salesforce. So you may or may not have Power Automate with Copilot right now. That'd be a question for your IT admins. It's something you could talk about, or we could talk about. But that's really the approach you would take with something like that. Yeah. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Sure.
Is the Salesforce AI, if anyone's using other agents or other types of AI within Salesforce, and how they find that to compare with the AI in Salesforce?
Salesforce is very about selling their AI product. So they lock everything into Salesforce, and it does really great within Salesforce, but does not necessarily take data from other places. You need to get that data in Salesforce for it to use it right. However, within Salesforce, it's pretty powerful. However, like anything in Salesforce is a big, big monster where it's like an iceberg. You learn a little bit about Salesforce or you do something in Salesforce, then it opens up all this other stuff underneath, right? So if you ever worked with Salesforce, there's a reason why Salesforce has so many consultants, right? The truth is Salesforce doesn't necessarily make it easy either. Yeah.
Another beginning into that, some changes coming to I know technology changes by the hour. Is there anything in your all powerful wisdom that as employers you can look forward to what's coming down the line with all the technology and AI?
Yeah. So yes, there's a lot of stuff coming down the line. And yeah, like I just said at the beginning, there's just in the last 48 hours, Microsoft has announced a lot that wasn't public before, that they were hiding, to kind of one up Google, because Google did that a week or two ago, right? So how do you keep up with that? It's very hard. What I will say is there have been times where we've had to draw a line in the sand. What I mean by that is we did a 6-month project for a really large company, a PR company that was dealing with a publicly traded company that doing a lot of sensitive information. And the truth is, when we started with a plan. Of course, we had to go back and forth with multiple proposals and things like that. Started with a plan on how we're going to do it. Got 2 months into it, and you know what? New stuff came out. And we would have to destroy the 2 months worth of work we did to take advantage of the new stuff that came out. At the end of the day, though, while yes, that was a cooler effect, and yes, there's some cooler things about it, and maybe some more options, the ROI of destroying the 2 months worth of development we'd already done was not worth it, right? So by the time we got it took us about 4.5 to 5 months to do that project. And honestly, if we were to do it again, we would do it a lot differently because of the technology that came out. However, the client's still very happy with it. It still doing really, really well. And so it's kind of like, I bought a 2008 Nissan because it was one of the first cars besides BMW and Mercedes that had Bluetooth that I could afford at the time, right? I wouldn't go out and buy a new car just because it had Bluetooth. I needed a new car at a time, right? So there's always going to be little incremental changes that are happening. Are those incremental changes enough to warrant the investment? And so that's a hard thing to weigh sometimes. And sometimes shiny tools do look really, really cool. But sometimes it's okay to run some older software. You look at like hospitals and stuff like that, because you work in medical, right? Yeah. You look at a hospital, and a hospital dropped $20 million on an MRI machine. Do you think because something came out 3 weeks later, they're dropping another $20 million on an MRI machine? No, they're running that MRI machine the way it is for 10 years, 15 years, right? And now, are there cooler MRI machines that came out 3 years after that? Yes. Does it still get the job done for the patient? That's the question you got to ask, right? And it's the same with AI. And sometimes you just have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is what we're going with for a while. And then a year or two, we'll reevaluate after we've gotten to a certain level or certain things have happened or more features have come out, right? Yeah. Yes, Gail.
Curious about the human side of it. So I called somebody today and I got their agent. And just like, okay, there goes that, the person who stands for the phone. And there's this human side of it that you mentioned that your email was going to be, go through this process, and you have somebody that assists you now. Everybody's worried about jobs.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that we can be doing that we can help people to get ready for this while still keeping our jobs, the human side of it?
So
come on.
That's an amazing question. And there's a lot of research and thought into this. There's actually an event, June 11th, put on by Bloomstack. That's a virtual event that has a lot of stuff about this, right? It's about for teachers and educators and different people like that to kind of figure out what to do, right? It's hard, but the truth is, if you learn how to use AI and are using AI, you're probably safer than somebody who's not. And I'm going to equivalent it to like in the 1910s, 1920s, while the change was not as fast, there kind of was a rapid change from horse and buggy to cars. And Henry Ford came out with the Model T and stuff like that, and cars became a thing. And within 10, 15 years, cars were pretty much everywhere. And, the horse and buggy was going away, right? I am sure today in this world, there are still a few master craftsmen out there building horse-drawn carriages. their addressable target market is very, very small, but there's probably still a few master craftsmen doing it. And they probably do a great job at it. They probably make good money at it. The problem is that's great. Not everybody wants horse and buggy. So if you were at that time, you had a choice to make. Do I go learn about gasoline engines? Do I work for a car manufacturer? Do I go do something else? Do I pivot, basically, right? And I think there's going to have to be an openness that people have to pivot. What you see a lot of, in my opinion, is you see people on like LinkedIn and stuff where, oh, they worked a job for 10 or 15 years, and that's great. They got laid off. I'm sorry they got laid off. But then they've spent 3 years trying to find a new job doing the exact same thing. Okay, maybe that job, there's a reason why there's no jobs for that, or the jobs are getting smaller and smaller and smaller every day, right? People are going to have to be willing to pivot. And then from society, there's got to be a lot of things like Career Source and the schools and people like that stepping up to re-educate people to do the other things that need to be done. Yes.
The question on top of that, I've seen a lot of quote unquote experts talk about how AI is changing work environment and the tasks, and a lot of the what we thought of as the creative class is slowly disappearing, and what we thought as the a lot of white collar class is disappearing. So then they come back and say that the premium is no longer going to be on your technical ability, but it's going to be on basically what they call taste. And I was wondering if you've heard that and what's your take on that is. It's like I think basically when and how to apply the AI as opposed to what AI is doing.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
I'll be
I don't know the experts all the time, right? The few experts I follow are people that have been in AI for a long time. And the definition of AI we follow in the Turing test and stuff like that was actually defined in the 1950s by Dartmouth, right? So there's a lot of history there. Machine learning and a whole bunch of stuff has existed well before the last 3 years of LLMs. But about taste and creativity, I think it gives you two options. It gives you a chance to be more creative, depending on how you use it, or it gives you a chance to be less creative, depending on how you use it. And I'll give you a weird kind of side quest, right? Star Trek versus Star Wars. In Star Trek, if you think about it, like they were creative in how they're going to approach a problem. And they told the computer what they wanted to do. They, flew the ship and everybody was happy. It was all for the greater good, right? And that's kind of the society they had. And if you look across the board, everybody in the Federation was fairly prosperous in a way, right? You look at Star Wars, and if you didn't have the Force, which if you want to equate to AI, whether you were on the dark side or, whether you're the Empire or the Jedi, right? If you had the Force, cool. But if you look at almost every planet inside of Star Wars, most of the people that didn't have the Force were war-torn and refugees and beaten the crap out of, and it was not very pretty for them, right? So at a certain point, you have to decide what type of society you want, and you have to push people that direction. And that gets a lot more political than what I really want to get at a certain point, but there's going to have to be a level of politics involved. There's going to have to be a lot of things like that to kind of figure out what type of society we're going to be. Are we going to go more to the Star Trek? Or honestly, we're kind of at a point in the next 5-10 years where it's going to be Mad Max or it's going to be Star Trek. One or the other.
Star Wars. The people that are promising us Star Trek are the ones wearing the black cloak with the white armor suit.
You may not be wrong, but here's what I would say. Unlike the Force where you were born with it, everybody in this room and almost everybody in society has the ability to learn it. Where, yes, in Star Wars, you had to be born kind of with the Force, and yes, you had to be trained in it, but not everybody could be trained in the Force. The truth is 90% of society could go through training on how to use AI and have the Force, if you want to look at it that way. Yes, I know. Yeah. Yeah. I we're running over time, but any other questions or thoughts? All right, Steve, I guess you want to close it out or? Yeah, my contact information. There you go.
We've got a survey based on the presentation today, and we realized that the
The AC setting was not ideal. It's lots of reasons. So be kind, but we gotta work for most parts.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick closing question? Did everybody get at least something out of this presentation? All right. This is the first time I've ever actively compared different AI models together like this. So I'd be interested in your feedback as well. Yeah. And I'll be around if you have questions. Come on, do your thing. All right.